this week's edition of the Recruitment Reality Podcast. I am honoured to be joined by Harvey Bass, who started his business 36 years ago in recruitment, and I'm really excited to have this conversation with him about essentially having been through a number of different challenging markets, downturns, etc., across that 36 years as a recruiter and a business owner. How has his business still managed to thrive through those times? What are the common and consistent behaviors that have enabled that success, really, and built a resilient company? Because I think there's a lot of recruiters out there that probably haven't experienced this before. You know, we had a huge boom, especially in 2021 in the tech industry, of, huge demand for candidates. So if you could find one, great, you basically got a placement. So I'm really interested to have this chat with you, Harvey, and kind of share some of your wisdom with our audience. I appreciate that's not much of an introduction to you and kind of where you came from and that kind of stuff. I'll just hand over to you, and you could give us a quick background on yourself.
Sure. Well, hello, everybody, and thank you for having me on. Um, I guess to start the boring story, I was 35 years old, about 15 years out of college, 5 or 6 jobs, basically came out of retail. Um, I was a buyer at Bloomingdale's in New York. I was a product manager for a huge textile company, and then I went into motion picture and broadcast video equipment, high technology before its time. So I had a variety of different industries and different experiences. And the one thing that was common with me is the entrepreneur in me came out in that I really didn't like to listen to people. I liked my ideas better than my boss's ideas. And when I lost my job due to a downturn, when interest rates were like 20% in 87, I decided to go into my own business. And I researched a number of businesses. And what I decided is I didn't want to be a retailer. I didn't want to rely on advertising. In those days, advertising was newspaper and ads in the paper and coupons. I didn't want to be a shopkeeper, and I didn't want to sell to the end user. So I wanted to sell or provide a service to business. And then I ruled out my own business and decided to go into franchising. My firm is a franchise of MRI network worldwide. So I figured whatever business I got into, I wanted to be in a paint by numbers business. I didn't know really anything about recruiting other than I used recruiters to hire salespeople in my last 2 jobs. So I had a familiarity with recruiting. And when I joined the network, I went into intensive boot camp training, came out, and I was very successful from day one. The reason for my success was I listened to my franchisor. I wasn't that brilliant, but if they said, stick your finger in your ear and make a phone call, I would do that because that's what the franchise told me. And just decided those days was no tech. There was no technology, no LinkedIn, no cell phones. I had a single computer in my office. I chose the route to hire people. I didn't want to be by myself, so I took it all the way up to about 80 people from 87 when I opened to 2000. We were the third largest office in the MRI network of, at that time, over 1,000 offices worldwide. And that story ended in 9/11. And then I had to figure out how to go from 80 people to survival, and figured it out. Got all the way down to 4 people in 2004. That was pretty painful.
Mm.
Rebuilt the company back in 2007. We got up to about 20 people. I moved to smaller offices, so I put a cap on my ability to hire. There was no such thing as work from home in those days, or very limited. And then, of course, the banking crisis hit. And then I had to get from about 20 people all the way down to about 6 or 7, and then remade the wheel again. Uh, Today, we're a very successful, little larger than a boutique firm. We're with about a dozen people by design,
Hmm.
mostly tenured people. My average tenure is about 8 years. Average age is about 32. And I still what's called work a desk. Although my ways, the way I work a desk is probably old school, as I am old, compared to what's taught today, what recruiters see today.
Awesome. Thank you for the overview. And I think there's a lot of people out there that would hugely respect the fact that you still run a desk, 36 years into running your own business, and like you say, actually still on the tools as such, um, especially doing it the old-fashioned way, which is the way of effort as opposed to automation, in my opinion. So I know that you do quite a lot of kind of speaking events or not speaking events, but you talk a lot to other MRI franchisees, right? What's the most common question? Knowing that they know you're in the top 20% of the franchises across the globe, like what's the most common question that you get asked by somebody maybe that's struggling or just is looking for advice from you within the network?
It's probably has to do the MRI owners. Um, our franchisor has coined the term of owners to managing partners, although some of us old dogs have resisted that, and I still call myself CEO. But we're the primary owners. Most of them, it's related to hiring our own recruiters, how we go about hiring our own recruiters, how we compensate them. Uh, Most of the owners are experts in recruiting. Out of the MRI training and out of attending meetings, they're pretty, even the single guy or gal who owns an office in Nowheresville in Utah. I'm not making fun of Utah. Um, they all seem to have the brilliance of what it takes to be a good recruiter. The
Mhm.
skills are there. It's more about how to run, how to go from one person to two people, how to go from 8 to 10, comp plans, uh, may have to do with, payment terms with, our clients. It's mainly that. But I would say most of the MRI recruiters still do, even the young ones do old school. They're not sitting, relying, 90% of them are not sitting by the phone waiting for a call in assignment because they just posted something or did a podcast. My
Interesting. So
reason for doing a podcast isn't for when I hang up with you, I'm going to sit by the phone and wait for business to come in. It's mainly a give back to help people and share with them what works for me.
yeah, well, thank goodness, Harvey, for that, because I'm not sure your phone's going to ring after the end of this podcast, but you never know. You
Yeah.
never know. So, I guess on that theme, then, well, maybe it would be useful for people to define what old school actually means. Like, what are the behaviors that you think embody the sort of yourself and obviously other MRI successful experts that you know?
Well, I don't think, the sale is called the placement in our business, how you coin it, color up the title. I don't think 99% of the time a placement can be made in permanent placement without a phone call or a series of phone calls. And that means candidates talking to hiring managers, recruiters talking to candidates, and recruiters talking to managers. One of the things that doesn't take the place. Technology doesn't take the place of getting to know somebody.
Mm.
So we can email back and forth all day long and text and message candidates and hiring managers, but without the phone call, we're not getting the flavor of how they're really feeling. So the old school approach is we do a lot of phone calls. Doesn't mean we don't do postings and we don't work with LinkedIn Recruiter. We certainly do, and we're not very good in technology here. I mean, everybody's sitting on their desk. I mean, we're old schools. We don't work from home. We have one person who works from home who's doing me 14 years. She came here as a single person out of school, and now she is a mom who works from home with two kids, and that works for us. I would
Mm-hmm.
never take, and this is going to be very controversial. I hope I can get out into my car safely, but I don't see taking young people, particularly inexperienced business people, and teach them recruiting in this business in their dining room by themselves. I just don't see that. So old school to us is you're in the office, you're making a series of phone calls and emails, and we do Zoom calls, and we touch people 5 or 6 times before there's action.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the new school approach is it's a combination of either a lot less phone calls and a lot less emailing and connecting via technology to the other extreme, which is spending most of the time traveling, going to trade shows, visiting clients, meeting candidates, podcasts and postings. Each one of those are important, but they don't take the place of talking to people on the phone,
Yeah.
whether you're in your bedroom or in an office.
And look, I've got my own opinions on everything you've just said. But why do you think it is that people opt for those things now? Why do people avoid phone calls?
Two reasons: fear and easiness.
Yeah.
It's easy to send an email to somebody you don't know. What's the worst that can happen? They don't respond to you or
Yeah.
they tell you to go away. The fear of getting on the phone with somebody live and them being rude is even at my age. You mean I was born when dinosaurs roamed the land. I get uncomfortable when I pick up the phone and I'm calling a vice president of sales and the person answers, Sue Smith here. That's unsettling even at my age and
Yeah.
makes me uncomfortable. And it's easier for me to just hang up and go away. But the adversity of trying to elicit a conversation, even if it's
Mm.
for 60 seconds, can be a challenge.
Yeah.
So, one aversion is fear and uncomfortable. Nobody likes to really be uncomfortable. It's okay to be uncomfortable. Like I said, you know, at my age, I'm uncomfortable. I still do it. The second thing, it's easy. It's easy to send out 150 emails with a point and a click. It's
Yeah.
hard to make a lot of phone calls. And, it depends on your business and what you're dealing with. Some people make 10 phone calls a day, some people make 100 phone calls a day. Depends on your business and how you're trained to do it. And I'm not
Mm.
here to say if you make less than X number of phone calls, you're not successful. But again, the two reasons is fear and easiness.
So when I first started out and I was cold calling, I was making a lot of calls because I was not very good at conversing because the uncomfortable fear would get so much that I'd get in my own head and say stupid stuff,
Which
and
I
people
do.
would just and it never goes away completely. But then as my skill increased, the number of calls I had to make, A, I knew what good looked like in terms of the kind of person that I was going to speak to, and B, the quality of the conversation always ended up better. So I just converted more basically, which meant I was in more meetings and less cold calls as such. Because this is the thing I hear all the time. Cold calls they don't work anymore. What people want is a multi-touch, social media led inbound environment. Nobody wants to pick up the phone anymore. We can't get their numbers. I agree, by the way, that I think they just take the easy route. But how do you actually, what do you say to somebody that goes, these are all the data points that mean we shouldn't be calling. We should be putting people in an automated email sequence, for example.
Well, you're right that nobody picks up a phone call anymore, but here's what people do, and here's what people do with their own personal cell phones. Nobody takes a call they don't know, but as soon as the little reminder goes on, you have a voicemail, you immediately listen to that.
Mm.
So as far as the actual cold calls, you're right. And nobody picks up the call anymore, especially if they don't know who you are. Or even more so, if they know you're a recruiter calling,
Yeah.
they may not want to take the call, especially a passive employed candidate. So, but here's my take on that. It adds relevance. Think about this. I don't know if they run the same obnoxious commercials. And I know young people don't watch TV anymore. They watch, cable or streaming, but there are commercials that are repetitive, obnoxious, annoying commercials. And, my personal ones are insurance commercials, car commercials, especially, Toyota Jan. Nothing against Toyota, nothing against Jan, who's a spokesperson. But how many people do you think hear a Toyota Jan commercial or a Progressive or a Geico commercial and immediately go and buy insurance or buy a car?
Yeah,
Very few. But you keep hearing those commercials over and over, month after month, year after year. And now the day comes, I need a new car. And I want to buy a mid-priced Japanese car. Toyota Jan comes to mind. It causes you to, I'm going to go buy a Toyota because it's in my mind.
Mm.
And, or insurance. I need insurance. Progressive, Geico. I see them all the time. So with a recruiter, we do a series of what we call 6 touches. Whether we're calling a candidate or a company for work, business, we call, say, Monday an email, Wednesday a phone call, Friday an email, and we alternate every other day for 6 days, about a week and a half. Sales 101, and I don't care what anybody says, recruiting isn't sales. It is. It's consultative selling. You're always selling something. You may not be selling a used car, but it is trying to get somebody to give you business or trying to bring an opportunity to a candidate to move to a better opportunity.
It's the ultimate sales job where you have to sell to both the buyer and to the product.
Yeah, and the
there
product
is no
cost.
more sales.
Yeah.
Exactly. And has an opinion. You don't just
Exactly.
go, here you
It's
go.
not like selling a copier where you put the copier here and that's
Does it
it,
work?
and you don't hear a word. But so what happens, I talk to people all the time and they think they know me. Oh, hey Harvey, how you doing? You and I, we go way back. We spoke. I've done business with you before. I've spoken with you before. The case is 90% of the people I talk to don't know me. I've never spoken to them. But my relevance to them is a familiarity that this guy calls me once a quarter about 5 or 6 times in a period of a week and a half, and then he goes away, and then he comes back in another quarter. And so people who say nobody picks up a phone call, it's old school, yeah, they're right. But the phones and the emails combined add relevance. But somebody who spends 4 hours working on a podcast and hoping that they're going to sit back and get business or get candidates lined up. And I'm going to get shot bullets here. The people who are focused on likes on LinkedIn, I've got 15,000 likes. I've got 900,000 followers. Okay. Is that getting you business? I'm not putting it down. That's not an important tool, but it's not the end all. And unfortunately, younger recruiters, doesn't mean by age, younger experienced recruiters come in and they think if they beef up their likes and they pay somebody to teach them about likes and followers is going to get them business, going to make them feel popular, but I'm not so sure it's going to get them business.
I think it's a minority of people where that would actually generate enough business to sustain a business. You know, the difficulty is that you get sold the dream that actually if you become a LinkedIn influencer, you know, and work on your personal brand, yeah, that's fine, but you need 100,000 followers, not 5,000, which is what you've got, and you're focused on it. You know, you need to be the exception rather than the rule for that to actually work. I think the other point that you kind of made was the recruitment world, in my experience, a lot of the reasons why companies hate recruiters is they had one good account manager within a business and then that account manager moved on and there's a lack of consistency. What you were talking about there is Harvey calls me every quarter for 6 days and he called me every quarter for 6 days and every quarter and every quarter. And it's that level of consistent message and stability, you know, that you're not just a fly-by-night kind of recruiter, you actually are going after the same person all the time, that makes part of the difference, right? Because if you saw one advert for a Toyota, it would be disappeared. But if you see 10 adverts for Toyota across a year where you're contemplating getting rid of your car, that's a totally different thing. So it's the consistency and sort of reliability of your business is built on the fact that you're doing it in that manner. Does that kind of resonate with you? Is that what you think?
Absolutely. Matter of fact, I can tell you as a owner of a business, I get probably 50 solicitations a day via email for buy something. And the shame of it is that 90% of them, it's a one-time email and they go away. And I never even look at what it says, but the person who is on my case 4 or 5 times in 2 weeks, around the 5th or 6th time, I actually read their email.
Yeah.
And I may have bought something for the business because their persistence says they get it, they're behind their product or service, and they're there. Where the person who makes one call, one email, and then shamefully, that's what a lot of recruiters do. One call to a candidate, and then they're gone. And the candidate who's passive and not looking for a job isn't probably going to call to action until they've heard from this recruiter 4 or 5 times. And then they say, okay, this person means business. This person's serious. I'm going to take a look at their LinkedIn and see what they're like, because that's the next thing. If you're not backing up a decent profile with a decent professional picture on LinkedIn, you're not going to get a call, especially from a hiring manager.
Yeah, totally. So just thinking about the sort of the cadence that you have, as in your six calls once every quarter, like maybe you can give some advice around or some insight maybe into feedback that you've had from customers, that the difference that calls make to them. Because actually, you know, the fact of the matter is, because barely anybody's making any calls, that is one thing that people go home. I didn't realize people made calls anymore. So this must be a totally different kind of business. And also like how you lean on that and translate that into the candidate side of the business as well. Because I appreciate from a BD perspective, that kind of makes sense. Do you do it exactly the same for candidates? How does that work?
Yeah, our recruiters are, each recruiter prepares for each project they have a pretty large list of candidates to call. They're really not cold calling companies. Who's your so and so in New York, but they have identified candidates either from our database or from a variety of sources. Of course, LinkedIn is one of them. That's a big one. And they're calling candidates 4 to 6 times within 2 weeks. touching, not calling. It might be 2 emails and 3 calls. It might be 3 emails and 2 calls every other day. It's just before you become a stalker. We're not a stalker and we're not annoying, but we're adding relevance when we get the callbacks from the candidates, it's usually you've called me 4 or 5 times. I'm open to listen to what you got. And they'll tell us. I've got recruiters who call me one time and I never call them back because I don't even call to action. I'm not, it's a recruiter making one call, no different than a copier salesperson making a call on a copier. So, what they're doing is they're touching candidates 5 or 6 times in the period of 2 weeks if they feel a candidate is a good fit for something that they're working on. We call candidates with a specific opportunity.
Okay.
We're not calling candidates to see, can we help you find a new job? That is and there's nothing wrong with that. That is the role of a lot of recruitment firms. And the one thing I just want to put an asterisk on. So the newer school, we have in MRI, matter of fact, the top 5 owners are all well over 20 plus years in the business, and they're all well over 50 years old. Secret, I'm over 50. However,
Harvey, I couldn't do the maths before.
However, they go, a lot of these, some of our offices, they go to trade shows, they do podcasts, they're out there meeting clients. That does work for some of our larger offices. I can also give you examples of smaller offices of ours that have tried to mimic the larger offices and doing podcasts and trade shows and committees and flying out to meet companies, and they're right now in trouble. So back to your original question, we do that for candidates as we do for hiring manager. Of course, the subject matter is different. For a hiring manager, we're telling them, which is the truth, we're working on a competitive search. We source some really strong candidates that you may want to hear about. That elicits phone calls back. We, again, with candidates, after they've heard us, they're going to give us a call and say, you've called me 4 or 5 times. What are you working on I should hear about? And we don't call and say, hey, I'm a recruiter. I want to get to know you. Give me a call. We call to action with, we have a very specific opportunity you should hear about. And that gets a response. I think when a new recruiter comes in this business, they've got to learn. It's just like if a football player or soccer player joins the team, no matter how good they were or what experience they had, they're going to be doing drills before they start a game, especially if they're playing for, lowly teams like Manchester or Manchester City or United. They used to be good. What I'm saying is they don't get to just go right out and do the sexy stuff that works for the top players. They have to, grin and bear it, just like we do here or in any business.
Nobody goes, no football club goes out to buy an unheard of footballer.
Exactly.
As soon as you've built that reputation, then it's a case of leaning into that. And that's when events and, likes on podcasts and, whatever it may be, actually take effect, because all you're doing is further increasing the credibility that you have rather than building a credibility that doesn't exist. And the only way to build that credibility, in my opinion, in recruitment is to place good candidates using a hell of a lot of effort, basically, until you reach the point where people come to you and go, hey, you've got a good roster of clients, you've got a good roster of candidates, we trust you to do a good job. One thing that you did say earlier that I somewhat disagree with, and I'd like you to convince me why it's important. Obviously, we're two totally different businesses now. I have worked in recruitment for 11 years and then switched to the other side selling into recruitment. We're fully remote. So we meet, maybe my sales team meets once a week, maybe. Sometimes we'll meet less than that. And obviously, you said, there's only one person in your successful business that does work from home, and she's obviously been with you for a long period of time, over 14 years, trusted, knows what to do, etc., etc. What is it? What's the difference? Do you feel that you get the additional benefit that you get from everybody coming into the office versus if they were kind of dispersed? I guess there was obviously a point where you saw them dispersed because of COVID, right? Working from
Right.
home where you had no choice.
When we switched at the time, our 17 people, March 2020, home for 13 weeks, our business dropped 30%. Now, part of it was just the economy tightened up for a period of time in 2020. But what's missing in our business, because we do a lot of phone work and there's a lot of synergy because they're all helping and talking to one another. Selfishly for me, half my training ongoing is people listening to other people. So we hire a new recruiter. New recruiter comes in, says stupid things. The experienced recruiter hears it and can correct them. Conversely, the experienced recruiter is doing really good stuff, and the newer recruiter or the weaker recruiter hears the stronger recruiter. So if somebody's sitting in Ashford, Kent, and in your company, and somebody is in downtown London, they're not hearing each other, well, and they're rarely talking except maybe a once a week meeting. So they're not hearing the ideas and the synergy of each other. Now, some businesses, a software engineer doesn't need to have synergy with other people so they can work effectively from home. But in recruiting, which, as we admitted, is some form of sales, and I'm talking recruiting now, I'm not talking other businesses, the people together, the old school world buzz, whether it's a bullpen, a sales floor. We have beautiful offices here. Everybody has private cubicles, but it's not private offices, and it's not everybody sitting in their bedroom. They learn from one another. They learn the good, and they hear the bad, and they hear the good, and it helps people. So I could take a person who's 25 years old with 0 to 1 job out of college, and I can make them successful in this economy 3 to 6 months. I know that doesn't sound fast, but that's the reality in this economy because they're hearing other people, they're learning from other people, and the newer people are listening at the tenured people. The second thing is, and again, I'm going to get a lot of haters for this, is the average human goofs off during the work week. If you read LinkedIn, people should be able to work 10% of the week and be doing fun stuff 90% of the week. All this stuff about having fun during the workday, yeah, it's nice, but work is work. Some people are lucky and have jobs they can't wait to get to work on Monday morning, but the average world, including me, would prefer to be at the diner having ham and eggs on Saturday morning, not have to be at work. So the person who works from home full time, she has a private office in her house. She happens to have an extra bedroom, and she's not sitting with a laptop and a cell phone. I paid for her to have 3 monitors and a hardwire high-speed computer and a regular hardwired phone, so she can make a lot of calls. So I guess it's not that there aren't successful recruiters who work from home, but I submit the following. The chances of taking a tenured, experienced recruiter and transfer them to home can work better than 90% of the time. But taking a person who's never recruited before, whether they're 23 years old or 43 years old, and put them at home in their dining room or bedroom or sitting at a beautiful view on the beach. And some people make that stuff up. I'm on my laptop on the Briar Cliffs. At the end of the day, I see a 90% fail rate. And I know there'll be plenty of people to argue with that, but the jury's out. All these people who started working or recruiting from home in 2021, are they still there today?
Mm. Yeah. I also think so I don't like working from home because I get very lonely anyway. Like there's no camaraderie at all with my cat. It just doesn't work the same, especially
Well,
as
you
a
got to get a
sales
dog.
individual. Yeah, well, that's the problem. I do have a Siamese cat, and he can play fetch, but he's still miserable, and that's a cat's prerogative, right? But we digress. But so I want to come in all the time anyway, just to be around human beings and get that, the like you say, it's like learning by osmosis, synergy, whatever you want to call it. Um, but there are some people that I do think work better remotely. But I think you just have to be specific, right? About who is it that we're talking about here. It's about entry level staff in a recruiting role that haven't done it before, don't know what they're doing, and therefore need to listen, need to understand what they've done right, and need that on the job, you know, critical and immediate feedback, both in terms of hearing positives and learning from their negatives. Right, that's what we're being specific about. Really, it's
Well,
not saying nobody could work from home. Right.
right. I could go out of my office now and take all my tenured people, 5+ years, put them at home, and they'd be fine because they have made good money. They've been through the mill. They get what it takes, and they have higher levels of responsibility.
Yeah.
Many of them have families or houses they own. Even my first, so like I take one guy who's 30 years old, single, been here 7 years, but he bought a house, so he has that obligation. Um, the and they've already been there, done it. They're successful. They get it. But I'm talking about new people, and the age not specific, could be 23 or 43 or 63. At the end of the day, half the learning in this business is you can't have a one-time training program and a once a week update meeting and think they're going to be successful, because they have to be successful every hour of the day they're working.
Mm.
And how do you learn? You learn from seeing and hearing other people. It's a team. It's like the difference between being on a team and being alone. And again, would I hire now? My model doesn't, for me, work like hiring somebody who's in Chicago when I'm in New Jersey. It just doesn't work for me. I don't care how experienced they are, but it does work for some of our other offices.
Mm.
It just depends on your model.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm
Well,
not saying it's a mistake to have people working from home. As I said, I could take my tenured people and put them at home, they'd be successful. It's the newer people.
yeah, and I also think it's just, people get so hung up on, like, you know calling out people that say that you can't work, that you should be working from the office, right? Like you say, careful walking to your car when you say some of this really controversial stuff that maybe people should be in an office. But the reality is, like, I still remember when everybody said, "Oh, Elon Musk has told everybody they've got to be in the office at Tesla and Twitter." And I was like, "Okay, we'll get a different job. If you don't like it and the company culture, it's not that difficult. If you're a good, skilled, diligent individual, to find a new opportunity with a company culture that does fit what you're looking for, right? And that just means your opinion's different to the company. It doesn't mean the opinion is wrong. It doesn't mean that people should all work from home. It just means what works for your business may not work for that individual, and it may not work for another business. So, that's the key for me to for people to kind of take away. Let's stop being so bothered about opinions and actually just think about what works for you as a business. And I reckon there's people out there now that own businesses that have their people remote, even though they don't want them to, because they're too worried that they're not going to get the talent that they want. Like for us, remote works, but
I went through. I put a hold on it now, but I went through a pretty good hiring binge, looking for people a year ago, and I never had anybody say to me, "I don't want to work for you because you're in an office."
mm,
Now, I wasn't going after 50-year-olds with 4 kids, 3 in high school, who had a lot of obligations during the day. But again, as an employer, and this is going to sound very controversial, I'm not employing people to take their kids to school during the day if I don't know them. Now, my tenured people, they do that all the time, and I'm fine with it because I know them, they're successful, and I know they're going to work hard. But
mm,
it's kind of like if you're recruiting a football player, and which we call soccer here. I'm not referring to American football, but could be any team. And the player is a CB player, which is viable. And the player says, before I join your team, I want to ensure that I have 75 minutes of playing time plus in every game.
yeah, yeah,
That they say, go somewhere else. Go to a lesser country with a lesser soccer team. Well, it's the same thing here. If somebody came to me and said, I want to make sure that I can take my kids to school, which is important, and I want to take my mom, visit my mom or dad in assisted living, and I want to be able to, do certain things during the business day. I don't know them. They don't have experience. It's not going to happen for me. It's
mm,
just for me. And I submit as an employer, like you said, here's my job, here's what I have. If you don't like it, I understand. You can go elsewhere. I mean, I've
yeah,
had people say to me, I don't understand why we got to be on the phones a couple hours a day when my last recruiting firm, I usually don't hire ex recruiters because of the contracts and the non competes that people claim they don't stand up. It still can be an issue. And
yeah,
I just don't hire them. But it hasn't been because I want to I don't basically recruit. We don't talk to people who live more than 15, 20 minutes from the office. So that's
mm,
we're not getting people who we like who live an hour away and we're asking them to commute. We just don't go after them.
interesting. See, because I think I do disagree with you on the like part of the when I started this business. One of the things that I actually wanted to have was that from day one, I gave that flexibility to anybody, um, on the basis that they gave their pound of flesh, to the business. So I'm happy to give flexibility straight away. I think the interesting thing is like as soon as somebody abuses that trust, it then becomes maybe more of a problem because I'm like I've given you the rope and you've kind of abused it now and it's going to be even harder for me to trust you in the future. Whereas if you actually started from a position of, look, you got to earn my trust to then earn the flexibility, maybe it'd be different. But it's horses for courses, right? Like I say, my opinion is I like other people having the benefits that I have as a business owner, which is I can go and pick my kids up if I want to. I can do a gym session in the middle of the day. Whereas you want them to be more tenured and earn that level of flexibility over time. And that neither is wrong. It's just a different philosophy of business.
Well, like I have a woman who's working here. Uh, doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman. I know it's not socially positive by indicating if it's a man or a woman, but it's a woman who works here about 13 years. She's probably in her late 40s. She joined me in her early 30s. When her daughter was in high school, and it was her 6th or 7th year here, her daughter played soccer. And in New Jersey, the soccer games, 90% of them are 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I let her go to every one of her daughter's games. No
Yeah.
problem. Didn't ask her to make up the time or anything. So, and she would leave 3:30, quarter to 4. And so I was fine with that. But if some new person comes in, again, doesn't matter what age, and they say, I want to be able to attend a sporting event 2 times a week and leave at 3:30, no,
Mm.
I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah. I think it's It's really interesting because, like in our world, again, like it is different. Our philosophy is different, but then we kind of expect new people to go have good judgment on that kind of stuff. Like it's almost asking too much of them at times. Like make the decision that's right for the business. Like, do you really think it's a good idea in your first 3 months to 2 days a week go to watch a football game? Probably it probably isn't because you're not up to speed yet. You're not delivering the numbers that you need to deliver. So act sensibly, but have flexibility. It's a debate that I could honestly have for ages, but sadly we
Well,
don't have time.
here's a bit of a research I've seen you can look up. How many jobs, if you were to poll 5 million sub 25-year-olds, college degree, I'm just picking, it doesn't mean you're better than a non-college degree, but that category. First 3 years out of college, how many jobs do you think they've had? If they had a full-time job. We're talking about 21 to 25 years old, college degreed,
On
full-time jobs,
average,
the average. How many do you think there are?
sadly, it's probably 2 to 3.
Exactly, 2 to 3, and it's mainly close to 3.
Yeah,
So, um, the younger people, and I've got young people here, nothing get younger people that come out of school. They've already gone through COVID in their final school years. They've gone through a gig working from home. Almost all of their communication is online, no conversations face to face. Even their personal lives is mainly online.
yeah,
Therefore, now they come into the business world. I'm not talking about teachers or doctors or lawyers, but they come into the business world and now they have to talk to people face to face or on the phone.
yeah,
It's very unsettling for them. And it's not their fault. They just didn't have the experience. So
yeah.
I've hired people who's finished their last year or two at home online, completing their college because of COVID, and their social life primarily wraps around their cell phone or online. And now all of a sudden they have to come in and, I have to put clothes, I can't pull my clothes out of the hamper. I have to come to work and look reasonably neat. you know, I'm not talking about dressing up.
Yeah.
It's a challenge. And a lot of our owners in our system don't hire the sub 25. But I
Mhm.
say you got to get used to it like I did with the millennials and the Gen Xers because they're eventually going to take over the workforce.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and
You know,
then
when
they
I'm,
become the decision makers as
yeah.
well.
So you got to be able to work with them. I mean,
Yeah,
granted,
absolutely.
when you're, you know, the 23-year-old today, 40 years from now, ear gauges and tattoos and uh, interviewing people from the beach is going to be okay. The biggest challenge is most of the hiring managers in business today, most of them, not all of them, are over 40 years old. And there's many in their 50s. A 23-year-old has a difficult challenge, and their life has been with younger people and teachers and parents. But their hiring decisions are made by people 15 to 30 years older than them. And that's
Mhm.
hard for them to relate to that
Mhm.
because all their friends, if you're dealing with a 50-year-old manager, male or female, they're going to have a different outlook on a 23-year-old than a 27-year-old
Yeah,
if they're lucky
absolutely.
enough to interview with a 27-year-old manager.
Well, and there's like you say, there's this subject of the environment that these people have gone through over the last few years. It's going to be tough to understand the It's always been tough to transition college students into work anyway, regardless, right? But now that's sort of hyper concentrated on this. Like I finished my studies at home, full stop. Everything else sort of stopped, and my world completely changed. And also just the sort of tied to um, communication via your phone rather than actually picking up the phone, which is it's just crazy, isn't
Well,
it? But
and I don't want to say, look, I've done some pretty radical things for an old dog my age. Give you an example. Every year we hire an intern, a college intern who works year round. We flex with their schedule. And this past year's intern worked here 15 months out of school, and she thought she was going to land a web design, digital marketing, social media job with a big company. She's, I don't know, 23 years old. She did a great job here. She couldn't find a job. I told her, cheat on me. Go out and find, I want you to interview other companies before we would consider hiring you full time. She couldn't find anything just because, how many companies are hiring social media, digital marketing people 23 years old with no experience?
mhm.
So I hired her and I told her, you create your job. I am not going to micromanage you. You touch on social media, internet research, digital marketing, and I'll talk to you maybe once a week. How's it going? She sits in another office of ours down the hall. And it's working out. Is she like I hired a 30-year-old social media digital marketing whiz? No. But she's hungry to please herself, her family, and her coworkers here, of course, her boss. And so I do things like that. And, she works here. She's 23. She spent her last 2 years online getting her degree at home because of COVID. And I think it'll work out. But, it's not like I'm adverse to doing anything radically up to date.
Yeah, no, I I think there's probably a huge swathe of recruitment company owners that completely agree with your mantra as well. Um, you know, I can name quite a lot of them in this building. In fact, that think it's crazy that people don't want to come to the office and all of that kind of stuff. And I don't disagree with you. Um, so look, we need to wrap up. It's been a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much. To kind of wind things down, it'd be great if you could give me maybe what's your kind of top bit of advice, either to a candidate or to a recruitment organization manager, owner, operator.
When the going gets tough, this is nothing new. This is old. This has been around a million years. Get up, dust yourself off, and make it happen. You know how many times I was going to give up on this business? Then I looked at my alternatives and said, I have a 10-minute commute. I sit on my butt. I drink coffee or water. I talk to people, and I make a hell of a living. Um, it's easy to give up, but it's harder to get back up and dust yourself off. But it works. And candidates who've lost their jobs, don't give up. Keep networking. Keep grinding and talking to people. I love when these people say, I just lost my job. I'm going to take 2 months off and regroup. A big mistake. When
Mm,
you lose your job, you have a full-time job looking for a job unless you don't need to work. So I
mm,
guess, for candidates, keep networking, keep at it, stay in contact with recruiters, especially when you don't need them. Just like a doctor.
mm,
You're not networking with doctors until something happens and you need a doctor. Um, and as far as the recruiters, this is a great business. It's a challenging business. It's a difficult business, but what isn't? I could be a bus driver. I could be working at McDonald's. I could be a banker. I could be a fortune teller. Everything is hard. Everything has its, we call it warts, pimples, and moles. At the end of the day, just don't give up. And I know that's no earth shattering advice, but that's what works for me and the people I surround myself with.
Yeah, amazing. Well, it's worked for 36 years in a number of very challenging times. So, look, Harvey, thank you so much for your time. If somebody does want to get in contact with you, either like I say, a candidate or somebody looking for business, what's the best way to get in touch with you or the business?
Probably look me up on LinkedIn, Harvey Bass, and I'll either direct you to the right person here, or if you have questions, I'll be glad to answer your questions. Again, I mainly did this to give back, and I'm appreciative of Woody getting in touch with me, and that's the best way.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And everybody, thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if there are any other recruiters or in-house recruitment consultants that want to have a chat on the podcast, please let me know. Thanks very much.